work is a way to pay for something else.
And other people may say, you know what, that's not the order of my priorities.
And I was led to believe I was stupid because I did not learn the way they wanted to teach me.
It's an experience, it's learning, and that there's value in having done the attempt.
They would be on my side. They would recommend me because they know I'm there to help them.
This is the Nico Lagan Show. Frankly, motivation is bullshit. What you need is discipline, and your mindset is the difference between success and failure. Warning. Warning. This show contains explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. Real, raw, and shooting you straight. This is the Nico Lagan Show. And now your host, Nico.
What is going on? Welcome to another episode of the Nico Lagan Show. We are at Chisos, Austin, Texas, where they make the best cowboy boots out there. I'm with the owner, Will Roman. What is going on?
Howdy, man. Welcome to Austin.
Howdy. He has you guys have to look at the videos because he has great boots. And yes, he has the cowboy hat too.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah, I think so. And you big boy too. He's not a small guy. All the guys that work here are big boys, actually. Is that is that on the resume?
There's something in the water, man. You know, if you're a Texan, we make them bigger.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Most things.
Talk to me. We're just talking about the mountains, West Texas, that I should go on my bike. Right?
Yeah. So the company is named after the Chisos Mountains,
okay,
which are arguably Texas's best and most majestic landmark. So they're about 8 hours west of here, out in far desert of West Texas. And on your way out of town, you got to go stop by them.
So they're in between here and New Mexico?
Yeah, they're down south. So, if you can imagine the shape of Texas and it has the left portion and it comes up and does that little hook, that's the bend. That's the bend of the Rio Grande River. So it's the Big Bend region of Texas. And so that was crazy about these mountains is that I get excited. This is my special place, all right? Like I'm sharing my happy place with you. So is that they're the foothills of the Rockies. So it feels like you're in Colorado, Utah, but it smells different. It sounds different because you're in high desert. I mean, you're in straight desert. I think it's like 4 inches of rain a year or something like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, the mountain range it's a circle in the middle of the park. And there's just nothing else like it.
So the actual Rockies starts there.
It's the foothills. It's the early, like where the plate tectonics were taking place. Yes, it is connected.
I've never thought about this because I've skied in the Rockies, but between Alberta and Vancouver.
Oh my God! Wow.
So when you think about it, they start here in Texas. They go throughout all the U.S. and then they go throughout Canada. So they're fucking long, is what
they're huge. Yeah,
is what I'm thinking right now.
It's huge.
So why that name? What's so special about those mountains?
When you're there, there's a feeling of stillness and peace.
Okay.
That I don't think I've experienced anywhere else. And I was out in West Texas when I started down the path to starting this business. And it just seemed natural to name them after the mountains.
Because you have to tell me your story because you were saying that Jamie might have exaggerated the story a bit. So how did that start? Because from what he was telling me, you were working in marketing somewhere, like you were living the corporate life and you just said, screw this, I'm doing my own thing. And you disappeared for like 6 months. It might be him saying and me not paying attention that much. So maybe the story is all over the place, but what actually happened?
It's like a game of telephone. I love hearing other people tell the story. It gets, they each put their own flavor on it.
Yep.
I think it's maybe what they are projecting onto the story.
Maybe your story's not fun enough, so we have to exaggerate
it. It's true. It's not. I mean, like that's the thing. Like the it's not flashy. It's not fancy. It's just good old fashioned hard work.
But what happened? Because you ended up in Mexico, right? Somehow.
I've been in Mexico a few times. So I think what Jamie's putting together is that there's a couple of I have, I grew up, my dad was a small business owner and I was homeschooled and my mom was an artist. And so, this like doing the normal thing wasn't ingrained in us. I did go to public school, but I didn't go to public school until sophomore year of high school. So out of 12 years of primary education, 3 of them were in the school and the rest of them were not. And so, and then my example was not someone who worked in the corporate world. It was someone who, and so I started when I was, I think when I was 5, I was selling a little lemonade stand on the corner. Do you guys do that in Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we need permits.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we were
have
going
permits
rogue.
and we're taxed.
We were going rogue, and but there was a kid down the street who was also doing a lemonade stand. So I started giving away free artwork that I drew with mine, and I think that's where it all began. And so as a kid, I would do like mail order catalogs, and you would go door to door and knock on doors and be like, "Do you want to buy some, linoleum or some wallpaper or some chocolate?" And so I was doing, then I would get the orders at my house and then I would deliver them. And so I had a lawn mowing business, and then I started getting into web design at 10 years old. I started learning how to make websites by the internet was just kind of booming, and you could go and look at the code and kind of reverse engineer it. But so the point of sharing that is that I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. And it wasn't like the trendy side of entrepreneurism. It was just, you just find how you create value for people, and you put in the work. And so I had a screen printing company, which is how I paid for college. And from there I went into startups, and I actually went to San Francisco area. And so I think that part of the story that Jamie might be picking up on is I had moved back to Texas. I was a product manager at one point, and I had probably, in retrospect, which is an unhealthy predilection for adventure. Yeah, I was a skydiver and did all sorts of stuff, but I sold everything I owned. I bought an old like 90s 4Runner 4x4, and I drove off into Mexico. And I was going for Belize, and I ended up circling the country for 3 months. I ended up in a hippie commune in the jungles of Palenque. I think that's what he's probably
he spoke about
about.
that. Yeah, he spoke about that. Yeah,
and made my way back, and I'd done a few trips like that. To be honest, I've gone to China, spending $100 a month, live backpacking in mainland China and camping on the Great Wall. Did the Mexico trip, and then at one point I had gotten a 1967 Volkswagen Bug with big huge Baja off-road tires, and I drove across the United States on a big road trip and lived out of it. Which, imagine like a 6'2" guy living in a little Baja Bug. And that was, I think my 20s were spent grasping.
Yeah.
And trying things and searching, and I was coming up on 30 and had this feeling of like it's time to, it's not that I didn't work hard, I worked very hard, but I was chasing these pie in the sky dreams.
Yeah.
And I decided, hey, I think it's time to get your act together. And so a friend of mine, you want to move, pause, and then we'll re-record this section?
No, don't worry about it.
Well, here it comes. That one's not gonna easily be edited out.
No.
All right.
There we go.
Let me back up.
That's a big trick. So you were saying that, because there's a couple of things that you said that I find very interesting, because a lot of people today they don't have the mind to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, to start something. Like, it's very scary for the average person out there to even consider quitting their jobs and concentrating on whatever their dream of. Do you think the fact that your father was an entrepreneur really made you become one? Is that where you got the inspiration? Do you think you would have been inspired no matter what?
That's a good question. I'm sure there's a lot of nurture versus nature wrapped up in there.
Yeah.
I think that having a dad who was worked for himself just subtly showed me that this is normal. This is the default path.
Yeah.
The default path is not to go try and work in corporate America or to work for somebody else. And look, there's nothing wrong with that path. That's the thing that I think most people they tend to lionize entrepreneurs, and if it's not for most people. No. And you have to pick what you value. I mean, like if I had gone in the corporate world, I would have at this point in my life had a much higher income and a much higher net worth. But I chose something different. My personal proclivity is towards independence. I have a classic problem with authority. And I want to be the master of my universe. And so to me, that means that I don't report to somebody else for my means of subsistence and income. And for a lot of people, that's not a requirement that they have. They want to raise a family, which is probably the highest calling you can do, in my opinion. They want to work hard, and they don't want to have to particularly maybe they find something that in particular that they enjoy. That's the other thing to think about, right? Like, if you're drawn to creativity and photography and videography and telling stories, you may not want to go spend 80% of your time managing a business, which prevents you from doing those things. And so by you picking to work for somebody, you may actually be your way of enabling your own master of your universe, because you can always leave that job. So I think that I want to be very key here to not discredit individuals who don't pick this path.
Gary Vee talks about that all the time, how entrepreneurs are always going to need employees, obviously, but there's nothing wrong with being the number 2 in a company, or being the number 3, or even being just a worker bee, because to you, it's simply a salary, and what you value is X, Y, and Z. Whatever that is, it's just not through your work. Work is a way to pay for something else.
Yes, and I think this is the thing that's interesting about modern society. When we talk about, people tend to wrap people up in their job, and they think that it's the most important thing. And for most people, it's not the most important thing. It's one part of a whole picture, And again, like going back to if you're spending, one of the things is, I'm in my mid-30s and I haven't started a family yet, and that's a key life goal of mine, but I haven't done it yet, and I could have done things differently, but one of the things that I chose to sacrifice starting a family until I had created this business and created this independence. And other people may say, you know what, that's not the order of my priorities. And I think that's great.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing I wonder, though, does the average person that either doesn't want to or doesn't have what it takes to start their own business regrets it later on? Because I gotta say, this is one of the reasons I do so many things myself. If I feel like doing something, I don't question it. I just do it because I don't want...
You don't question it? Come on. You gotta. We all have urges and impulses that we then go, that's not a good one.
My girlfriend's right there. Look at the look that she's gonna give you. No, I'm kind of crazy when it comes to that.
Well, look, I'll push back on that a little bit. I think that we are wild beasts, my friend. And all of civilization is us pushing back on our urges and examining them. So I understand what you're saying about there's something here that I'm interested in. Okay, yes, it's positive, and yes, there's a risk to it, but I want to make a run for it. That I totally support, but I gotta say, we all think about things that we might do, and we go,
I throw a lot of shit at the wall and see what sticks.
That's one way of doing it.
Yeah, because unless you try it, I've always been in the mind of, if I don't try it, I'll never know, and I don't need to try it for long either. It's a matter of...
Give me an example.
We started recording. I have an idea for a show. And we started recording episodes. I've had them edited like they're final. But then we started trying to book people and book more people and book more people, and it became more and more tedious. It wasn't working. I'm very happy that we did it. I'm happy that I got the experience in front of the camera. I'm happy that this is how I started building a team behind me of editors.
Yeah.
But the project itself is put on ice because I needed to try it. But then I'm a strong believer that if I'm working towards something and it's not falling into place organically, there's something telling me, like, I believe there's something bigger than all of us. This is kind of the power at B that's telling me it's not time. Just let that go. But I'm still going to try. I'm going to try whatever comes to mind. I'm like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's try it. And I'll try it for a couple of weeks. And if it doesn't organically starts working out, like if it doesn't feel right, I'll stop right there. I'll put it on the ice. I write procedures about everything. So my Google Drive and my Microsoft is filled with procedures that I know how to do it. So I could go back to recording an episode tomorrow because I have all the procedures on how to do it. But I know that I'm going to put it on ice. It's the right idea, but not the right dream.
One level is practice.
Absolutely. One of my goals this year is to spend as much time in front of a camera as I can.
There you go.
So that's one of my goals. And I was thinking recording a show is something I've never done before. Not in a way where I'm speaking to the camera. Like doing this, I've recorded 150, 200 of them in the past 2 years, right? But doing it where you're just talking to a camera, you're talking to somebody and you're introducing them to a subject is a very different way of being in front of a camera. So I wanted to try it. I'll go back to it, but it's not yet. It's not, something's telling me that it's not the time, but I do that with a lot of things. I'll try. I'll set some things up, and if they stick, awesome. If they don't, no harm's done. Like, I don't feel that it's not a failure. You try. If it speaks to you or it doesn't, could be the next passion of mine, right? The same thing could apply to you.
I think that there's something you said that's pretty valuable, which is that there's this getting rid of the fear of failure and reframing it. You know, that it's an experience, it's learning, and that there's value in having done the attempt.
There's one of the best skills that I think, at least the best skills I've ever developed, is sales. I've been in high-end sales. I was a sales engineer for a telecommunication company for 12 years. So I'm used to selling very big contracts to very big corporations. And although it wasn't my passion, I've always saw it as psychology. If you look at the power of sales, you need to understand the mind. You need to understand the individual.
And you need to understand their need.
You need to understand their need. You need to know how to extract the information, because a lot of people know they want something, but they don't know what they want exactly. So you need to be good at extracting that information. But it is one of the best skills that somebody can possess is sales, just for the fact, not because you're good at selling, because you're good at interacting with people.
Well, this is funny. So this is actually a good segue into going back to the story. So coming up on 30, so the role that I took, so a friend of mine is a recruiter, and she's like, hey, you should go interview for this position. And I was like, I don't want a job. I'm driving around in my bug. And she said, look, I think you should just go interview. And I said, okay, for you, I'll do it as a favor. Turns out she's a lot smarter than I was. And I ended up taking the role. And what it was is I went and worked in the software world, but selling to the big Fortune 500.
Okay.
So we were doing oil and gas, food and beverage, you know, companies like Schlumberger and Unilever in Mexico. And my job was solutions consultant, which is essentially a sales engineer.
You picked up technical needs from a customer and you design a solution for them.
Exactly. And
so we did the same role basically.
Right. And and the key here is that, you know, I would go on site though. So if you're working in, say, oil and gas, you're going down to a land rig. Yeah. You've got these guys who are dealing with very dangerous situations, who are, you know, blue collar country guys. Yep. And you're trying to get them to go from using, in our case, you know, pencil and paper to using an iPad and using technology. And you can't send, you know, the first version one is they'd send the guys from San Francisco and they'd be like, well, would you please use our software? Yeah. And they're like, no, get the hell out of here. Like, we don't have any respect for you, right? Yep. And so I would go in there and I would just shoot the breeze with these guys. and you connect with them and you understand them and you hear about their women problems and you hear about their job problems. And then you go, okay, so what's going on with the job problems? And eventually you get down and you figure out where you can lift out these particular pieces. The next stage then is going and dealing with the executives and being able to give them information that they couldn't get on their own because they can't talk to those guys either. And so I did that for a number of years, and it was this invaluable experience of going to the boardroom and going to the shop floor, seeing engineering facilities, learning how to go in and understand where efficiencies could be gained, which is crazy because you think about these big businesses, billion-dollar companies, and then you have someone from the outside who can come in and then go, oh, here, here, and here, I see the issues. Mm-hmm. It's because you're not so close to the problem.
You're an outside perspective, exactly. You're not day in, day out, plus you have the advantage that you've spoken to other companies. You've seen how other people have done it.
There's that too, yeah.
Because I've had so many times with customers, I would tell them, even if you don't buy services from us, but you're looking for a different type of service, even if we don't sell it, get in touch with me. I'll still guide you in the right direction. We see new businesses on a daily basis. There's 10 or 20 of us in my team. If you're looking for something, even if I don't sell it, there's somebody on my team that knows where to get it, and I'll happily send that information just because we meet so many people on a daily basis, right?
Of course. And so from a career perspective, this is a step away from where I wanted to be, you know? But the thing that I thought about is that, like, if I were to, like, at that time, I wanted to scope out where I want to be in life. I want to have my own business. I want to not have a board of directors. I don't want to be beholden. I want to be doing something that I'm at least moderately interested in. And I want to be doing 0.0001 positive impact on the world. You know, I don't need to be changing the world, but I don't want to be pouring lead into the drinking water. You know?
Yeah.
And so I had tried to go from, my 20s were trying to go from basically zero to everything. And it just kept failing. And then so when I took back and I took this role, what it enabled me to do is get my finances right, get invaluable experience, learn about relationships, learn about selling. And then I was able to go to my next thing, which is when I had some friends who are very, very smart, a lot smarter than me, were starting a company doing high frequency trading in the crypto world. Yep. And they needed the jack of all trades. They needed the guy that could figure out how to fly to Malta and set up so that we could domicile there. Mm-hmm. And so the goal was, instead of going, I changed my mindset. Instead of going from zero all the way, let me just get one step closer. Yeah. You know, so now I went from working from a corporation to working for a startup. From working for a startup to co-founding a startup with investors and a board and all that type of stuff. And then that experience and that process was enabled to make the final jump, which is to get here, which is that I was able to exit that and start something on my own and hit all four of those requirements.
You're saying what you said is so valuable because we, as a society, are so used to having instant gratifications on everything.
Yeah.
And we cannot see the big picture. We're so focused on the end goal. It took me 10 years to separate myself from my corporate job to being my own boss. Now we have 3 employees looking to hire a 4th one, and we're living out of a fucking RV, traveling the U.S. But it took me 10 years, and all the skills that I built, I knew, and that's the question I have for you. Did you realize when you were going through, let's say, as a sales engineer, because what you were describing earlier is exactly how I saw it. My role was not to sell solutions. My role was to create rapport with those guys, and it didn't matter that they were the blue-collar guys or the white-collar guys. I needed the blue-collar guys to tell me what they needed to make their jobs easier, more efficient. And by them trusting me, they would sell me on the inside no matter what. Yeah. They would be on my side. They would recommend me because they know I'm there to help them. And then you sell the solution to the higher end, knowing that that's the blue collar guys. They require that job. They require whatever the service that you're selling. How useful is that skill to have in everyday life, in your opinion?
So, you know, when I turn around and I look backwards, hindsight's 20/20, and I can paint this nice little clean path, right? Remember, like, I was doing websites, and I built our website. I was doing graphic design, and I did all of our branding. I was doing engineering optimization in factories, and now, of course, I help with that side, and I've designed the boots and the product. But at the time, I didn't know all those things were going to come together. I had latched onto an early piece of advice, which was that always be learning. And I think that comes from a homeschool background, being a self-taught learner.
Yep.
But also is this idea of that, like, practice, because if someone gives you an opportunity to go into the game and you haven't been practicing, you are not ready.
No.
And so you don't know when that opportunity is going to come along. So in the meantime, get better and just put in the work. And I think that, like, if I were to look, you say it took you 10 years. I think it took me about the same, you know, from about honestly, I say it's about 15 for me, from all this path to getting to the place where I could do this. It's not an overnight thing, you know? And I think that's why I said earlier, I was like, it's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's just, you know, you have to put in the work. You got to push the broom. And the thing that I would say, though, if I were to talk to a bunch of students, say, and turn around and give them some advice, it's like, you don't want to just be spinning your wheels, though. You don't want to say, oh, I've started at this one area and I've mastered this thing and now I'm going to stay there. That's where I think that it sounds like you and myself got a little bit lucky, is that we wanted to go try new things. So we got to a new area and picked up that skill. We got to a new area and picked up that skill. Because if you had a Venn diagram and you've got 3 circles, if you can figure out the one where you're good at 3 different things and the overlap, now you're something special. Now you're indispensable, and you can charge for that. And so the thing that I try and tell kids is like, listen, you want to try and find the thing that creates value for the world, that they'll pay you for, that you're good at. And if you're lucky, you have a little bit of interest in it. You know, like going back to the sales thing, I didn't care about selling software to oil and gas, but I was good at it, and I was able to refine those skills. And so it got me further up the chain. You know, you don't go all in one leap.
See, I knew right away, as soon as I was one of those nerds working in network operation centers. I was the one fixing shit. And one day the sales manager's like, let's put a suit on you. Let's see what you're able to do. Let's put you in front of the customers. You can do more than what you're doing right now. And I just saw it as a challenge. Just, okay, you know what? Game on. You want to put me in the ring? Cool. I believe in baptism under fire.
I remember the first time I ever pitched to an executive team, big executive team, is we brought in the CEO of the company, was like, you're coming with me. We're going down to Sand Hill Road. And we were pitching to the executive team of Halliburton, which you may be familiar with, Dick Cheney, etc. And everybody but Dick was in the room. And I ended up going toe-to-toe with their chief technical officer.
Nice.
And I was terrified.
Of course you were.
You know, on the inside, on the outside, you're cool and you're collected and you're personable and blah, blah, blah. But on the inside, I was shaking in my boots. And the funny thing, though, is that, like, this is how every new skill starts. You're not good at it. You don't know what you're doing. It's scary. You were saying about how you've done 150, 200 of these shows. And now it's second nature. Now you can, and so once this is the thing, is you go and you learn that skill, and then you can go on and you find a new one. You find a new challenge, and eventually you'll figure out how you're going to piece the pieces together.
I remember my biggest deal too. 300 different sites, biggest school board in Canada.
Wow.
We're sitting there.
School boards. Oh, I don't want to deal with school boards ever again.
I didn't choose to be in the public sector. It's just the woman, the saleswoman, her and I were banging like together. We went to a meeting. It was just, you know, when you feed off each other.
I had a buddy like that.
It's just too easy. You sit down and it's just no preparations needed. You're so used to dealing with each other. But I know what you're saying.
But you've put in the prep time. That's the thing.
I studied psychology for the past 5 years. And instead of getting more and more technical, I was the least technical guy of my team, but I was the best at creating relationship out of the blue. And this is what I recognize. I'm like, I'll never be the most technical guy, nor am I interested to be the most technical guy, but how can I be the best? If I could step in a meeting, I don't care who you are, if I can make you laugh, and I will try within the first 2 minutes of any meeting. If I can make you smile, make you laugh, I'm fucking golden. We're good. I know that I'm able to sell you something. I'm not worried at all. You have to speak about your upbringing as learning from home, because this is one thing.
As what?
As homeschooling. Because that's one thing my girlfriend and I believe in. I don't like the education system. I don't like the way it is. I don't like the way they box people. And I was led to believe I was stupid because I did not learn the way they wanted to teach me.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I believed for so long that I was dumb, and I quit school. I was 15 years old. And I always thought I was stupid.
It's funny because that's the first time I ever went to school. Was 15.
But looking back, what was the idea behind that? Because your parents couldn't have been, from the sound of it, they couldn't have been more polar opposite. One's an entrepreneur, the other one's an artist. So how the hell did that happen? How did they meet in the middle and say...
I mean, it's not that different anything. So my dad's an immigrant from Hungary.
Okay.
And escaped under the communist regime after the fall of the Nazis. I mean, pretty wild story there. Went to Canada, actually. Worked on tobacco plantations. And in the 80s came down to Texas. Maybe the 70s, excuse me. And I met my mom in the 80s. And so, you know, my mom grew up in Louisiana and Texas. And had, you know, she became a sign painter, you know. So she was a bit of I use the word small business owner as opposed to entrepreneur on purpose, because I think entrepreneur gets confused with Silicon Valley and with taking a bunch of money and with all this glamour and glitz and chasing, you know, these big numbers and stuff. And we're all out here to save the world, which I think is mostly marketing.
Yeah, of course.
But a small business owner is someone who just looks in front of them and says, okay, what are the pieces that I have to work with? Let me put them together in a way that creates an income and is part of the community.
Yep.
And so, you know, at that time, I think my mom was really the big push for doing the homeschool stuff. She didn't like the way the public education system was going, and we couldn't afford private school. And I think that, you know, it was, well, hope, you know, maybe she'll listen to this. I think that is probably one of the best decisions she ever made for me in my upbringing. And I think that if you're listening to this and you're considering homeschooling your kids, there's the value of the curriculum, and now they're pre-made ones now, and they've got internet things that can help you. It's fairly straightforward.
Yep.
You know, learning math and English and how to write a good paper is probably 10% of the value of an education.
Yeah.
I think the other 90% is kind of what you're talking to, which is that how do you interact in the world? What is your relationship to authority? What's your self-confidence? What are the things that you value? And that's the type of stuff that I learned through osmosis from being around my parents so often.
And I think that learning how to teach someone is very important too, which the public school system can't. You can't... If 90% of people learn a certain way, they're going to push that way, and the 10% or the 5% or however the numbers are that don't listen.
I think it's more like 50-50. I mean, at this point, I mean, you look at the numbers out there, it's like it works for maybe only half of kids. It's not a 90% success rate. 90% success rate I could be okay with.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. I just, from my own experience, I would never put my kids through that. Plus, as you said, there's so many skills that they'll never be taught.
I think it kind of goes back to being an entrepreneur, not being an entrepreneur. Is that the homeschool option is not available for everybody, and it's not best for everybody. There are some people who will do fine in that environment.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
But I think that the key here is that like I've got a buddy who's got 2 kids. His eldest one had started school. And within a month, the kid went from being an outgoing, exuberant, curious, wonderful child to being depressed, didn't want to learn, and all this type of stuff. And they said, what is happening here? They pulled him out. They were able to homeschool, and he's back to being himself again. So you got to be aware of the child. And I think that I'm similar to you. I mean, you know, if I was in detention by the time I got to high school. I couldn't sit still. I don't, you know, we're doers, you know, and I don't learn from sitting still and quiet and putting my hands in my lap, you know, and just regurgitating information. And so I think that if I had gone through the system young, I probably wouldn't have come out the same.
And thank God my mother was smart enough to see that I couldn't sit still, and she's pushed me into sport my whole childhood. Thank fucking God.
Sport is fantastic, yeah.
But thank God she did that, because I look at the kids now that are all on pills for ADHD. I'm ADHD. I'm very high level ADHD, but I've learned how to settle my brain.
It's not a bad thing. This is the thing that
to me it's a superpower. I would never want to get rid of that.
It's evolutionary adaptation. You know, I mean, the people with ADHD are the ones that expanded and explored and took the species out, and so this is why it's still around.
Yeah, but it's important to learn how to control it.
Sure,
like
of course.
I'm normally somebody that gets up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time I go to the gym at 11 or 12, I've been working for 8 hours straight.
You get it at what time?
2 or 3 a.m. in the morning.
I think I went to bed at 2 in the morning.
If I go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm still up around 4. Like it's just the way I am. But I do bet my best work before 11 or 12. So this goes back to
what we were saying earlier. So you've learned to control your ADHD and to channel it.
I've learned how through meditation how to focus my mind. And now I can work 8 hours without moving. I'll just get up to go to the bathroom and refill my coffee.
Do you use music while you're doing it?
All the time.
Yeah.
I have headphones. I learned how to use binaural beats to rewire my brain, depending if I will listen to different type of binaural music, depending if am I writing a book? Am I creating? Am I working hard? Does my mind need to be focused and not too in my imagination center? I've learned to control my brain, and the reason I work out around noon is I know that in the afternoon I do mundane tasks, stuff that doesn't require me to create. Mm-hmm. So the workout kind of takes care of my ADHD, so that in the afternoon it's more relaxed, but I can spend 4 or 5 hours just doing what I consider boring stuff. But I have learned through sports how to control my ADHD. I let it run free in the morning, but I've learned to focus it. And then by hitting the gym, I just kill that portion. It's like I tire my body out.
Yeah.
My brain gets to relax. And then I just do the easier stuff in the afternoon.
Nice.
But it's through sports. It's through similar to what your parents did to you by keeping you at a home.
Well, then we were sports all the time. I mean, my dad's European,
but it's so important for boys.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Today I would be, if I was a kid now, I'd be filled with drugs. No questions about it.
Well, it depends on who your parents are. Maybe they're enlightened. I mean, there is a even here in Austin, especially here in Austin, actually in the outskirts, there is a very big growing movement. I mean, I just think of my friends, and from all different socioeconomic statuses. I don't, 50% of them don't send their kids to a public school.
Well, that's beautiful.
And there is this movement that's aware of it. And again, I know that it's not available to everybody, but for those that can, and those are willing to make the sacrifice, a lot of times, I mean, homeschool takes sacrifice. You're giving up a second income usually for a family, but at the same time, you're not paying for childcare, you're not paying for a lot of different things. So anyway, the point being is that I think that there is a return to it. I think I was homeschooled in the 90s, early 90s.
So you guys were crazy.
Right,
that's
it was
crazy.
Weird.
Like, what the fuck
everybody thought we were weird.
I
probably am weird.
What the fuck is wrong with you people? Yeah.
But now it's almost like it's on the cutting edge now,
But it makes sense to me. One of the reasons I'm working as hard as I am is I don't want my girlfriend to have to work if she doesn't want to. And the second thing, I'm thinking tutors. Yeah. I want tutors for my kids. I want somebody that's going to follow us around, that's going to be there to teach my kids the academic stuff. And then the other 50% of what what school will not teach you, I want to be there to teach. I want them to experience it. Because by the way you spoke, you did a lot of traveling. So have I. And if there's something that changes your worldview is experiencing different cultures. And going to a fucking all-included resort is not fucking traveling. People out there, this is not traveling. Backpacking is traveling. Experiencing the culture of different countries, the way the people are living it. Not sitting your...
Sometimes you want to take a load off, though. You can still go to the resort.
Yeah, but it's not... Oh, yeah. I'll go to Cuba and I'll smoke 25 cigars in a week because I'm there to do that. Yes. But you're not exploring somebody else's culture.
Correct.
What was the one thing that came through your mind when you had a headhunter that tell you should take that job? You took the interview and you're like, fuck, I actually like that job. Did that kind of kill your mood of traveling? Did you have to put that on hold for a while?
It certainly didn't kill it. No. I just got back from doing 14 days in Colombia. So it's you can't. I'm not doing 90 days at a time.
Yeah.
like I was before. But you know, I think that I think that taking that role was a shift point. I think that if you look at, I'm gonna talk about male development. I'm familiar with male development as a male.
Yep.
And it's one of the things that I've read more. I'm reading a book right now called The Intentional Father. I read a lot of things that are around this, trying to prepare me for child rearing. So, and a lot of this stuff will apply to females, but I think especially for boys and for men.
But this podcast is aimed at boys.
Well, so this is
so perfect.
So I think that you go through these phases, right? And so, let's take, we can talk about childhood. And there's 0 to 4, there's 4 to 8, there's the adolescence, that type of stuff. But let's get to your 20s.
Yep.
And I think that it's actually the path that I took inadvertently is a natural and a healthy one, which is that you should be spinning around, trying different things, experimenting, learning different industries, learning different skills, traveling. I mean, here's the thing: you've got so much energy and resilience. I slept on the Great Wall of China on a rock wall.
Yep.
Like now, I mean, I could do it, but
Ouch.
man, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna deal with the back pain for a week, and I'm gonna be grouchy the whole time.
It's not the same.
And then it was exciting.
Yep.
Oh my God, oh man, we might get robbed. Like this is cool. We'll fight somebody. Like it was just a totally different world. And I think that approaching 30, you have to then begin to coalesce all your experiences into a framework.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could, the only thing I would change is I think that actually I wouldn't change it because I had emotional maturity I had to achieve.
Yeah.
But if I had focused on that sooner, I think that I would have wanted to start a family in my late 20s. But hey, look, we had different things we had to overcome.
Absolutely.
And, but by the time you hit about 30, you've got to start taking that and putting it into a structure. And so Chisos is part of the plan for a structure that I came up with at 29 years old. Mm-hmm. Which is that I was like, I want a family. I want to provide for them in a certain way. You mentioned tutors. I want tutors. I want help. I want a big family. I want my wife to be able to be a part of focusing on cultivating the children as opposed to going out to create revenue and be part of the machine. And so this is what I've been building towards. Now I'm 36. So I've been building towards this for 7 years consciously for this particular thing.
Good for
which
you.
was take this business. I was going to go to a startup, go to the next type, co-found it, and then get onto my own thing. And so I think that then, you talk about as you approach 40, what usually happens at 40, I think this is why people have this quote midlife crisis, is really what it is. It's an evaluation of looking back and going, was I able to achieve the dreams that I had? And the hard part is that most of us, actually all of us, will have to let go of some things. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. You know what? It's not gonna happen. Maybe one day I'll buy my way onto a spaceship. But I'm not gonna be a NASA astronaut. I didn't go through the path. I picked other things, so I've got to let go of that. And there's a little piece of you that mourns the death of that dream. And I think that the thing to focus on is that you want to make sure that your framework is set up so by the time you get to 40, you are on the path to achieve what you're trying to get out of life. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of mourning to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that even if you do have a lot of mourning, that's totally fine. It's a moment to reevaluate and to readjust. What the negative is that when people hide from that pain and they douse it in alcohol or women or sports cars or whatever, this is the classic midlife crisis, and they divorce and they marry younger, all that kind of stuff. That is a negative way of dealing with a natural progression.
The reason I'm looking at her, I literally just finished a book on the midlife crisis and what it is for a man to go through it. So everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's basically what I wrote on. But I go even further though.
Okay.
There's one thing I'd push even further is I totally agree with you. In your 20s, you're supposed to be trying out as many things as you can. Like I was speaking to a 22-year-old the other day, and I'm like, at your age, you should be, I'm not saying you should be sleeping around, but you should be dating a different type of women. You want to have a family? Already he's 24, sorry. He's already interested by a family. I'm like, find out the type of woman that you like and find out your values. Then you can find somebody that aligns with both, that aligns with what you want out of a woman. Like, let's say Josie and I, one of the things I like the most about her is her family values. She was brought up, she's Italian, she's brought up A family is the number one most important thing.
Wait, French and Italian getting together here? This is like worlds colliding.
Yeah.
Let's not talk soccer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't care about soccer. I like man sport where people are fighting, but yeah, that's fine. But all to say that I totally agree with you. With your 20s, you're supposed to be exploring. Figure out what you are, what you want, but put your mind together. As you said, framework is a beautiful word. You need to understand where you're going to go.
Yeah.
In your 30s, you make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
Because most of the people forget that if you look at the statistics, people think that being successful is something you do in your 20s and your 30s. Actually, as per the raw data, mid-50s. In your 40s, you really start getting higher, but you don't get, you get the most income normally mid-50s.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what you've got to build that structure. That
of course, there's a career behind it. There's a framework, however you want to call it. But the thing that I find that I would say that the midlife crisis is related to one thing prior to everything, and it's purpose. A lot of the guys have done exactly what you're saying. So they went through their 20s trying to figure out what they wanted. In their 30s, they're on the path. But then they get to their 40s. A lot of guys already have kids. Most of the guys are not like you and I. Mm-hmm. Most of the guys have kids. Their kids are 15. Like, I have a lot of friends. Their kids are like teenagers.
Yeah, same.
But they're sacrificed almost their whole 20s and their 30s to take care of their family. And as a good man, that to me is totally normal. That's your job. But then they get to their 30-ish, they're 40, they're like, okay, what now? I've been grinding for so long. I probably have money in the bank. I have a nice house. My wife's taken care of. My kids are good. What the fuck do I really do? Like, what do I really
The Second Mountain. Have you read that book?
No, but I like the title. But this is redefining your purpose. Yeah. This is why people get exactly like you described. They start chasing younger women. They divorce their wife. They look at sports cars.
Those are the acting out, right?
Because they're not facing their mortality. Because if you're not thinking about dying in your 40s and realizing that you're not 20 anymore, you got a lot of fucking growing up to do, because you gonna die. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, you're halfway there.
Oh, I like to say you're on the back nine. You're coming back to the clubhouse. Like you're coming back to the clubhouse. So if there's something to be done, you might as well fucking do it now. So what's your book about the two mountains?
So I'm forgetting the author at the moment, but essentially the summary is that the first mountain is usually career and ego driven and money and that type of stuff. And you get to the top of it and you get there and you go,
that's it.
Basically, that's it. Yeah. This isn't fulfilling.
No.
Right?
No.
And so then you've got to determine what is your second mountain. And the second mountain is usually service oriented if you're really finding true fulfillment.
Yep.
You know, and I connect with that a lot, you know, because I think I'm attempting to climb two mountains at the same time. I'm trying to merge them here with Chisos, you know. So Chisos is primarily a way for me to set up this financial life to support my family.
Yep.
But the way I'm doing it, we have a saying here that how you do something is just as important as what you do.
Of course.
And for me, this is the way of being in the community here in Austin. It's the way in being in community with our greater audience. Mm-hmm. You know, we interact with people. We talk to them on the phone. We have events. We'll have 300 people here in the backyard. We'll put up a stage and we'll welcome people in, you know. And this experience that you and I are having, sitting around the fire and chatting, is what we do every week with normal folks. And so this is part of it. But the next iteration, the dream of this is to have, you know, acreage in the hill country, to have a place where you can come and recharge.
Yeah.
I want to have a horse sanctuary, you know, like there are these things where you can come and, like, for me, you know, you talk about ADHD, you talk about childhood issues and anger and all the type of things. And for me, it's animals, it's nature. This is the way to heal all that. And so creating a place where people can come and they're getting it whether they mean to or not. You know, it's like trying to get someone to go, like, people won't go talk to a therapist, but they'll sit around and shoot the shit with you and drink a beer. It's the same thing.
There's no difference. I totally agree with you.
And so this is essentially creating that place. And so I think that's part of my second mountain.
I have to ask you this because you're kind of opening up the door, and I'm always going to ask that question if the door is open. When you were in Mexico, did you dabble in the psilocybin mushrooms? Did you actually play around with?
I didn't actually.
You did not play with mind-expanding substances. Thank you.
No, I think that here's the thing about that is that, you know, you can take something of that nature to accelerate a process.
Agreed.
You know, the other way of getting there is this idea of this slow travel and getting away. So here's the thing: when I went down to Mexico, for instance, I didn't take a smartphone. This is like 2015. They were around, but they weren't ubiquitous yet, right?
Not like today. Yeah.
You know, I had maps. I had a cell phone, but I had maps.
Yeah.
And I had printed out MapQuest, if you guys remember that.
Yep.
Shout out.
Yep.
And I was gone for so long, and by the time I came back, I remember like the first 3 or 4 days, like you're bored out of your mind, and then you start to slow down. It was 3 weeks in, and a shift kind of took over me. 3 weeks to being unplugged and not. And the other thing, you're not just unplugged, you're out of, when you're in the city, this is why I like going out to the Chisos Mountains. The same reason is when you're in the city, you are subconsciously aware of status games, you're aware of danger, you're aware of all the different nuances that go into what I need to put in my fridge this week. All those things are occupying your brain. And when you can get away from it, you start to slow down, you start to have things bubble up that you've been ignoring.
Yep.
And so 3 months on the road, going slow, camping by yourself, sitting there staring at the same sunset for days on end, enables you, actually it forces you to focus on those things and to think through them. And I remember very distinctly, I came back to Austin, and like the next day I had lunch with a friend, and she said, your energy is different.
Yep. Of course it is.
And I'm not, classically, I'm not a, woo-woo person. I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, there's just, you feel like a different person right now. And like, there are different ways to quantify that. But I think that you can get to those places. This is part of what travel enables you to do too.
Agreed.
And
spending time alone.
Spending time alone, yeah.
Because we've been on the road for 3.5 months. Prior to that, I spent 2.5 years in the top of a mountain in a log house in the middle of fucking nowhere in Canada.
What were you doing? Where were you staying? What's the situation?
Basically, I was a sales engineer back then. I was downtown Montreal, so one of the biggest cities in Canada. I was downtown, living there, doing my thing. I would work, and then teach martial art at night. So that's all I would do, is be surrounded by people day in, day out. When the COVID restrictions happened, like when COVID happened in Canada, we were restricted up the asshole. Oh, it's one of the reasons why we left, because we can't agree with what they did. But I didn't have a choice. I couldn't leave the country. I wasn't allowed to leave the country. So what were my choices? I'm not vaccinated, and I'm not ashamed of saying this, but 95% of Canadians are vaccinated. So I was in the 5% that was threatened left and right from my old employer, saying, if you don't get vaccinated, you're going to lose your job. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was wrong.
You know what?
Canada was, anyway.
Oh, no, they were 100% wrong. Yeah. I totally agree with you. But as I was telling my girlfriend, I repeat that to her all the time, there's things I control, there's things I don't. I do not control that. This is out of my power. So I sat down, I'm like, okay, those are the cards I'm dealt. How the fuck am I playing them? I said, I took advantage that all my meetings went from face-to-face to Zoom and Teams. I already had a house, an investment house in the middle of nowhere that I was renting. So it was an Airbnb. I wasn't worrying about it. I wasn't going anymore. I had somebody taking care of it. And I just decided, I'm like, you know what? I'll get rid of my place in Montreal. I'll move down there. I got a Starlink from a super high-end internet connection, and I started working from there. I really made the choice there's two things. I wanted to spend time alone. I read the Bible. I'm a big fan of Buddhism. There's a lot of concepts that to me have been forgotten, that are shared in most religion out there. And spending time alone is one of them. It is one of the primary teachings of any...
Jesus goes into the desert, yeah.
Buddha spent 47 days or 46 days under the Bodhi tree, and he faced the devil, his own demons. He faced himself in the same way as Jesus faced himself in the wilderness.
40 days and 40 nights, yeah.
Exactly. So this was one of my intent, is to spend time, get bored, get scared, because now I had no backing away. Like, I lived 25 minutes away from the closest grocery store. I could walk my dogs on the main path, not see anybody for an hour. It's just we're walking right in the middle of the street. Nobody gives a fuck because there's nobody there. So, but I mentally did it because I saw an opportunity to learn about myself. And that lasted for 2.5 years, and we left 3.5 months ago. Because she joined me the last year. She moved out from Montreal, and she came to live in the middle of nowhere because I had a plan. What we're doing right now, I've been planning for years. It's just I needed, as you said, I needed to push the broom. I needed to do the work. I needed to, you know what? I needed to shut the fuck up, do the work, and just believe in the process.
I think that there's a lot of things to say here. I want to add one more note to the pushing the broom piece is that you don't go to the top of the food chain all at once, right?
Oh, no.
And I think this is a thing that every generation's youth have to be reminded to be humble.
Oh yeah.
And you have to start at the bottom. And you've got to do the work, and you've got to show the value, and then that's when you get the opportunities. The other thing I'd add to that is that Mark Manson has this great phrase where he said, "You got to pick the flavor of shit sandwich that you'll eat."
That's very good. I like it.
Because
who said that?
Mark Manson.
I love it.
And even with with Chisos, it's like there's the fun stuff, which is hosting the events and interacting with people and talking on podcasts. That's great. I like that part of the sandwich. But there's also the countless hours in the workshop and doing the numbers and the stress of taking people's livelihoods onto your shoulders and working on the weekends during Christmas. And all this stuff that nobody sees, right? There's an endless, never-ending list, and oftentimes physical backbreaking work. But you know what? That's the flavor of shit that I'll eat. And I think that's part of where your superpower comes in, is you figure out. Look, you guys are on the road, and I've lived on the road, and there's great things about it. But there's some shit there. Literally, sometimes you got to deal with it. and you've got to you realize, you go, okay, I'm willing to deal with those distractions or frustrations, because the payoff is what I want to achieve. And so I think that's part of what your 20s is figuring out, is actually is going, okay, what is the thing that I'm willing to deal with to get where I want to go, and
learn what you're made of too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are a lot tougher than we actually...
That's a great point.
I'm a lot tougher than I thought I was in my 20s until somebody gave me a chance to prove it. There's nothing like... I believe in mentors, and I believe this is one of the biggest problem with young men today, is that they do not have father figures or mentors to teach them those things. Because that same sales guy that took me out of the Network Operations Center saw something in me that I did not know was there. He saw it as a man that was older than me and just say, you know what, that guy has something special. And I think that if I can apply some pressure on him, not to force him, but to give him an opportunity to prove himself, I found something that I did not know existed. And now I cannot live without that thing. Like, if he exposed something that completely changed me just 100%. By believing in me.
I had different mentors along the way that did the same thing.
Beautiful.
And they picked it out. I could think of even so when I was working in the software sales, Lawrence Whittle is the CEO, and he's the one who was like, you're going to go here and you're going to be in this difficult situation. Because he said the same thing. You see something in somebody. So I think that one of the lesson there is to find mentors that are going to challenge you. But I think the other thing is you need to throw yourself into these situations yourself. And you mentioned travel is one of them. Going to a foreign country, especially where you don't speak the language, and doing it on no budget, and having to figure out how to survive, require you to behave in a certain way and to be reliant on yourself, and you'll bring those lessons back. You'll bring that confidence back.
It never goes away.
I mean, it's like, look, I don't know that I would wish a street fight on somebody, but I got a lot of street fights in my teenage years and my 20s.
As you should.
And so I think that, I don't know that it's as you should. I think that you should find structured ways.
You should.
This is like sports. You find structured ways to fight that fear.
No. You need to know what it is to fight in this. There's a very big difference from a guy that fought in both a ring and fought outside, you need to know what it is to fight for real.
I think that you should not go around looking for fights.
But that's not the same thing. You should never, the only reason you should fight is if somebody puts you in a situation that you are not able to get away from.
So I think that you can benefit from being in the altercation, but I don't know that I suggest that people go and seek them out.
I would never, I used to be that guy. I used to be that guy that seek them out, and that's how you get in trouble. That's how you end up in jail for doing something you shouldn't have done.
It's actually, it's a misuse of your masculinity.
Oh, yeah. You know? It's an ego thing at that point. It's very egotistical.
But you should be prepared.
Yep.
There's the point being from all of this, though, is that like taking those lessons and then being able to walk into other situations gives you this quiet confidence of knowing that like this situation I'm in right now is nothing compared to what I've been in before.
What's the worst that's gonna see? I was explaining that to somebody the other day. One of the worst thing that can happen to you is having a bunch of guys jump you and kick the shit out of you and know that there's nothing you can do about it. Like being in a situation where you have no control over. I don't wish it on anybody, but having been there, those situations are learning lessons, because I put myself in that. My big mouth put myself in that situation. And you know, Mike Tyson said that one of the biggest problems today is that we don't get punched for being assholes, basically. There's no physical consequences, and sometimes you need that as a self-check, as yourself knowing, okay, you know what? I deserve that one. Maybe I'm going to think better. Next time, maybe I'll learn to shut my mouth, or at least think before I say something.
I think it's a healthy learning experience for most young men.
I don't wish anybody to get permanently hurt by it, but being smacked back in your spot and say, bro, you're not that tough. You're not that big. You got to check what you say to other people matters. You need to check your words. We're just over an hour. Literally, I'm going to ask you one more question and we can stop it there.
No, this is great. I'm enjoying it, but we've got a shop to run.
No worries. It's, I always go with the flow. I don't force those things. If you have shit to do, I want to ask you one more question.
Before you ask me one more question, I have a thought on the fighting thing, or the physical prowess aspect.
Prowess
is that there's no virtue in not being dangerous.
Oh, I love it.
There's virtue in being dangerous and using it appropriately and or restricting it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you know, you look at a pit bull, and the pit bull is playful and rolls around with the babies, and you go, wow, what a well-trained dog.
Yeah.
Because it could destroy that baby.
Oh, yeah.
But you put it in there with, you know, I don't know, pick some like a gerbil, some soft little, no one's impressed. You know, I think that there's this modern idea that you should be weak, you should be meek, which is different than being humble, which is different than being capable, because you need to be able to be a protector.
Yep.
And I think that one of the things about this world that this is some of those traditional values that maybe get missed is that there are bad people in the world.
Oh yeah.
And you've got to be stronger than them in order to be a protector.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. I like to call that side of me the monster. I'm a big fan of American Bulldogs. I've had quite a few in my life, and that's what I imagine.
That's what I had. My boy. Yeah.
So I have, in my head, I have a 130-pound American Bulldog. He's shredded. He's mean.
That's a big dog.
But he's leashed to the house, and that's my monster. He's very well trained. He's very good with kids. But try to touch those kids, see what happens.
Exactly.
But this is, as Jordan Peterson explains, as Carl Jung explained, how a lot of psychiatrists will touch on, a strong man is an extremely dangerous man that has it under control.
And it's not even a new idea. I mean, this goes back to the ancients.
It's a new idea today to believe that that a strong man is toxic.
Oh, right.
I don't know if you heard that expression, but I absolutely love it. If you think a good man is dangerous, wait till you see what a weak man is capable of.
Yeah. I agree 100%. There's even, was it C.S. Lewis, I believe, who had written in one of the books, I believe maybe The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They're going to go meet the king Azrael the lion, and somebody asks, "Is he safe?" And they go, "No, but he's good."
There you go. That right there explains it exactly. There, and that comes back to what we're saying about knowing how to, what it feels like to get beat up.
Yeah.
Exactly for that. Because you know that you and I were good. For all I know, you're a very good person, but don't fuck with you. See, there's certain things that there's a respect thing that we forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of respect comes from tiny bit of fear is healthy.
There's we talk related to this is these ideas of what do they call it? There's high trust societies.
Yep.
So like I just got back from Colombia. It is not a high trust society. They're still inspecting your vehicles for bombs when you go into Bogota.
Okay.
And kidnapping's a problem, stealing, thefts, all that type of stuff, right? So everyone's they don't trust each other, and people think that a high trust society is one in where everyone is trustworthy.
Mm-mm.
But a high trust society is one where the mechanisms of punishment work well.
Yes, agreed.
And so that if the people step out of line, they know there will be consequences and they will be swift.
100%.
And I was thinking about this the other day. I was walking with a female friend, and this car was cruising the other direction, and the windows were rolled down.
Yeah.
And this guy, probably 30 years old, kind of leans out and licks his lips at her as he drives by.
Really? Like, what are we, 12?
What are we, 12? But it's a disrespectful thing.
Yeah.
And in moments, I had stepped at the vehicle and yelled at him in his face as they drove. I couldn't, they're driving by. What am I going to,
Yeah, there's nothing to do.
But you could see this reaction.
Yeah.
He expected there to be no consequence.
Yeah.
And the goal here for me is, sure, I'll be honest, there's some ego involved. There's me wanting to protect the person I'm with, which is the majority of it. But there's a third thing here, which is that young men need to know that there are consequences and that older men are going to push back on their bad behavior.
And I play that role all the time. And it's not even an ego thing. I had a conversation with
You're helping them. You're helping set them on the correct path.
But there's one of my friends, ex-military, ex-special forces, and he always explains how if you do not know how to deal with those situations, it's your fault, you should learn. But if you know how to deal with those situations, it is upon you to make sure that you do. So if I see an altercation between two people, I believe that people should be allowed to fight. Because do you know that as per the law, it's legal to fight?
It's what law?
It's as per the law. There's nothing illegal about fighting. If you and I decide right now to fight, it's okay. You're disturbing the peace. If none of us are pressing charges, you're going to be, if you get caught, you're going to be charged with disturbing the peace because you're annoying other people. You're being an asshole to the rest of the people. But at the end of the day, you and I are allowed to fight. But if I see two guys fighting and one of them hit the ground and he's done, I've been in martial arts for 20 years. I know what the fuck a guy looks like when he's done. I will jump in and separate. That's not right. Now you're overstepping the boundary of a lesson. Now you're just being sadistic. But if two guys are fighting and it's a good fight and both of them are conscious and they're just they got something, I'm not going to get involved. Yeah. But if one of them quits and the other one is still bashing, bro, I'm going to knock you out. That's not right. I'm going to intervene. But that's to the point of my friend is, if you don't know, if that type of situation scares you, learn to become comfortable with that type of situation. And the day you're comfortable with that situation, now that you possess the tool to deal with it, it is your job. It is required of you as a good person to fucking intervene. Don't be a bitch. Like, you see this? No, but if I have the skills to help somebody, help somebody.
Don't be a coward.
Don't be a coward. Especially if you possess the skill, it's up to you. What's the point of fucking having the skill if you're not going to use them? What's the point?
Agreed.
Right? So I want to finish with this because I want to let you grow your business. I believe in it.
I've really enjoyed this, and we can keep talking for hours. Yeah.
We can do it again, man. We can do it again. We can do
it. The next time you're going to tell me about your trip to the Chisos after I give you all the stuff.
Yes, promise. Absolutely. Define to me what a good man is.
I think a good man is the summary of most of the topics that we've talked on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that a good man is somebody who has a moral compass,
Mm-hmm.
who is contemplative. It's not shooting from the hip. You've taken the time to study, to know yourself, to know the great philosophies, to know the history of humanity. And from that, you've decided on what your moral statutes are. And then the next piece is this latter part of our conversation. You train, which encompasses mental, physical, and financial, to be in the position to then defend and enforce those values. Because if you only just have them and you believe in them, but you're incapable or unwilling of acting on them, you're not a good man. There's no difference between you and the man. You do nothing. And so I think that is the simplest way of me answering that question.
Be a protector, be a provider, have the balls to go after what you want, have temperance or self-mastery or self-control. And the only thing I'd add to what you say is have faith. Have faith in yourself, because that's where confidence comes from. Have faith in others, because that's how trust starts. And have faith that there is something bigger than you. Whatever you want to call it. I don't care. You call it nature, you call it God, you call it the universe. I don't care how you call it. Just know that you're part of a whole that's way bigger than you'll ever understand.
I like it.
Man, on that note, I fucking appreciate your time. This was all. I'm always happy to meet somebody new and have a conversation like this when we did not know each other 2 hours ago.
This is solid.
I love it.
I appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for your time, man.
All right, man.
You've been listening to the Nico Lagan Show. Nico has been involved in the martial arts for 20 years. He's a Muay Thai coach, focus coach, podcaster, and sought-after public speaker. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten some useful and practical information. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Coach Nico Lagan and on YouTube at The Nico Lagan Show. See you next time.